Good evening, everyone. Welcome to you all, and I'm delighted to see you here this evening. My name is DeRionne Pollard, and I am the proud president of Montgomery College. I'm honored tonight to have with us Robert Green, the director of the Montgomery County Department of Correction and Rehabilitation. Under his responsibility is the Montgomery County Detention Center, where about 13,000 offenders are processed in an average year. After a maximum hold time of 72 hours, inmates are transferred to the Montgomery County Correctional Facility, which houses about 1,028 inmates, both men and women. Some are in pretrial status, and some are serving sentences of up to 18 months. The important mission of the correctional facility is, quote, to protect and serve the citizens of Montgomery County and the general public by providing progressive and comprehensive correctional services to all inmates. As many of you know, one of the central themes of the college's series about defining America has been opportunity. Who has access to it? What constitutes equal access? What role does opportunity have in our national narrative? The U.S. welcomes people to this country who have all kinds of challenges of which they must overcome. They may have been born into terrible poverty, grown up in the midst of war. They may have been victims of violence or fleeing political persecution. In the United States, these people all get a second chance. But what attitude does our nation take towards people who have made a mistake? As in any society, there are circumstances in which people make bad choices and end up in the criminal justice system. If you make a mistake, do you then forfeit your right to opportunity? Is it a second chance, a part of the American spirit, and is it the same for those who have been recently incarcerated? Tonight, we will address some of these questions with our esteemed guest and hopefully talk about incarceration in the context of race and poverty. Now, there may be some of you who are sitting here thinking, if you break the law, it doesn't matter what your race is or how disadvantaged you should be or have been, you should be punished. And there is something to that indeed. But if you've been paying attention to the last couple of years, there are some patterns around incarceration that have been attracting a lot of attention of late. So I want to present a couple of slides that talk about Maryland just for context. I took the liberty of looking up some of the demography in the Montgomery County Jail over the last 25 years. Now I know we have some where you can't necessarily see the axis lines, but I think that you can see that people of color have been overrepresented in the custody when compared to their presence in the wider population of the county. And if you look at this slide, the solid line represents the percentage of each race's population that is incarcerated in Montgomery County, where we have 3 races here, and the broken line represents people of that race as a percentage of the general population of the county. You can see that on the slide, African Americans and Latinos are incarcerated at higher rates than white people when compared to their makeup in the county. These numbers are from the Vera Institute of Justice, which conducts research on incarceration to drive policy and practice. One question I think that we all must ask is a simple one: why? Part of the answer may be access to opportunity. Opportunity is generally dependent on one's education. People without post-secondary education are much less likely to get a job that falls into the category of middle skills and almost entirely are locked out of all high-skill jobs. These 2 areas of work are the only real pathways to a middle-class existence in our country. You can see in this slide from the Pew Research Center that although all people of races are getting more education, African Americans and Latinos trail behind whites and Asians considerably. Now, we all know that people with lower levels of education are frequently working the jobs that pay the least. And in times of broader economic turndowns, such as what we saw in 2008, these are the folks who end up without jobs at all. So just to give you an idea, I want to look at those numbers that reflect unemployment by race in Maryland. Now you can see from this slide that unemployment rates among African Americans and Latinos in Maryland are higher than that among whites. Montgomery County is probably represented best by the DC suburbs, which is probably, as you can see, fifth in the line down. Now, this data is from the US Census Bureau American Community Survey. So I think that we can start to see that there are some patterns in education and unemployment and poverty in many of these ways. And I'm going to ask Director Green to comment on some of these in a moment, but I want to add one more fascinating study by the RAND Corporation, which I hear Rob talk about frequently, which studied correctional education programs and concluded that inmates who participate in correctional education programs had a 43% lower odds of recidivism than those who did not. This translates to a reduction in the risk of reincarceration within the 3 years after release and 13 percentage points. The analysis also found that every dollar spent on education in prison results in $5 saved on reincarceration cost. Now, I'm sure that is one of the reasons that the Montgomery County Correctional Facility has partnered with the college on supporting inmate learners. In January of 2016, our Workforce Development and Continuing Education Division took over educational programs in the Clarksburg, a maximum security jail, which includes classes such as GED, ESOL, food safety, Serve Safe, food manager certificate, digital literacy, and so many more. The program also provides help with MC registration, acuplacer testing, and advising to prospective students while they're still in the correctional facility and the pre-release center in Rockville. 32 inmates were recognized for completing their GED or high school diplomas while in this facility this year. This was the highest number of inmate learners to graduate since Montgomery College took over the program. 13 of them participated in a spring graduation ceremony, during which each was given a certificate worth $1,500 and scholarship funds to attend Montgomery College post-release. As you can see from the GED dashboard up on the Montgomery County Corrections Facility, interest is growing. The college is thrilled to have served 1,780 inmate learners since January of 2016, and we are proud that 11 of our faculty members have taught at the jail or pre-release center since then. Director Green, one of my favorite people in Montgomery County, I look forward to our conversation tonight to talk about your perspectives on opportunity for those who are rejoining our communities and trying to live their lives on productive paths. Before we start, I would love to introduce one of my other favorite people in Montgomery County, Steve Hull, editor and publisher of Bethesda Magazine, to say a few words. Steve?
Thank you so much, DeRionne, and good evening, everyone. We are pleased and proud to be the media sponsors of the Presidential Dialogue Series. I think this is our third or fourth event we've done together, and we look forward to many more. Bethesda Magazine and Bethesda Beat share at our core something with the Presidential Dialogue Series, and that is a passion, a commitment to promote conversation and understanding about important issues facing our community. Tonight, Dr. Pollard will speak with Robert Green, the director of the Montgomery County Department of Correction and Rehabilitation. Before coming to DOCR, Mr. Green served for 15 years with the Frederick County Sheriff's Office, where eventually he rose to become the director of corrections there. Following a national search by Montgomery County, he was named the warden of the prison and jail here in Montgomery County. The national search didn't have to go far. They just looked at Frederick County, and there you were. And in 2015, he was named the Director of Corrections and Rehabilitation. I've also learned in talking to him before tonight, he was one heck of a track athlete in college. He can run really fast. Then Labor Secretary Tom Perez called Mr. Green not only a local leader, but a national leader. I hope you will enjoy tonight's important and very timely conversation. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Steve. So I thought I might give you an opportunity for some introductory comments before I get into my list of questions that I have. My intent, just so the audience will know, is for us to have a dialogue probably to 7:50, 8 o'clock, depending on how well we go here, and then to open it up for questions. There are 2 microphones in the audience, so when we get ready, I'm going to ask you to ask succinct, short questions that will give us an opportunity to have many people respond, but also give Director Green an opportunity to share his thoughts. So might I invite you to make some introductory comments?
That's a dangerous thing to me.
know.
I enjoy talking. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you, Bethesda Magazine, for your interest in this topic, and all of you for coming, your interest in listening to what we're doing in corrections, having some of this national conversation about corrections. And may I also tell you, it's humbling and easy to do good things in Montgomery County when you're surrounded by leadership like Dr. Pollard. So, and I just appreciate your focus and your assistance to us with education in this realm. So, no, I'm open and I'm ready to go with the questions.
Well, let's get the rock and rolling. So my first question is, I don't imagine, and I might be surprised to hear otherwise, that you woke up as a child, because I ask my son probably once a week, what do you want to be when you grow up? Lately, he's had some very interesting observations because of the Olympics. But I will share with you that I suspect you didn't wake up and say, oh, I want to be in corrections. Talk to me about your pathway of how you got to this work.
I think as many people, pathway for me was influenced by mentors and strong figures around me. I'd always had an interest in public safety. I grew up in Washington County. I grew up in a community where you probably could not throw a stone without probably hitting an individual family member of an individual who worked in the prison system or that environment there. But public safety, more so the law enforcement side of the house, was something that was very interesting to me. I can tell you where perhaps coming into the field, I came in with that focus, be a police officer, started in corrections. Actually, the administration of Frederick County hired me when I was 20. I was too young, and then they realized I had to wait out another 6 months to be 21 before I started. Started working in the correctional environment, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the focus, I enjoyed the people, I enjoyed the engagement, seeing where we could go. There was a lot of growth there, and it also took me back to probably the most influential person in my life, which was my grandfather. And this is a bit, as they say, around the barn to how, but my grandfather we were farmers, and part of the agricultural program in the state of Maryland was, at one point, the prison system in Washington County operated the largest single farm inside the state of Maryland. The agricultural programs, they were, corn, all of the different programs that they had there, but corn and different types of corn and hybrid corn, I remember, as a 5-year-old, was a big issue. My grandfather and I, along with many other community leaders, would go there. You go to the prison, and we spent a day with a presentation done by the inmate population, by leadership, by Maryland leaders, talking about how the farm worked, the things that they had done, some of the research around it, and I didn't go in with a preconceived notion of being uncomfortable. I remember I enjoyed that time. I enjoyed the people I saw. I didn't witness anything like we see on TV today, and the one thing I'll tell our friends here is I still look for the show. I look for the series that actually talks about what we choose to do for a living every day in corrections, because it doesn't exist. I still haven't seen it. It's very inflammatory in many aspects. It's entertainment media versus what we really do. But that kind of took me full circle going back, and I can remember my grandfather talking about admirable work. And it took me back to that moment. So I would tell you that was probably one of the points in my life as a very young man, and then having that opportunity present itself to me to stay in corrections, go into law enforcement. I said, no, I think I'm going to stay right here, because it took me to that point in time.
I was struck by your observation about the way in which entertainment media has shaped how one thinks about the work that happens within our criminal justice system, in particular, what happens in correctional facilities. And it's such a stark contrast, I think, that representation with what you see in your mission statement. And I referenced it earlier, and I want to speak to it. On your website, it says, the primary mission of the facility is to protect and serve the citizens of Montgomery County and the general public by providing progressive and comprehensive correctional services to all inmates. I think those two, that dichotomy that you described, what your mission is and how you choose to do that inside versus how it's portrayed in the media. Can you talk a little bit more about that mission and how you balance this responsibility you have both to the citizens who are incarcerated and also those of us who are in the community that these jails serve?
Well, we've got to operate a facility and facilities that operate within this realm of physical and public safety. But you also, the day that you're arrested and come to jail, if you were so unfortunate, you don't lose the rights of a citizen. And I've often, and we've been asked, well, why doesn't it say inmate? Protect the rights of the citizens and the inmates. That's a given to us in Montgomery County. You are a citizen, you're an inmate in our facility. But when we talk about, and I'm going to digress a bit, when we talk about prison and jails, I want to make sure that everybody in the audience understands exactly what we're talking about. Prisons and jails, as much as we share the word corrections, the title corrections, we are infinitely different. All right, so jails, there are 24 jails in the state of Maryland, 24 county jails. Jails primarily are pretrial facilities, sentenced to terms of confinement less than 18 months, maximum of 18 months. Anyone sentenced to a term of confinement over 18 months goes to prison. So when we talk about local jails, pretrial in nature. So people, often get the question, well, do you hold bad people? Do you hold the individuals that we read about in the newspaper? Yes. We hold everyone, from the individual that you've seen that perhaps has a low-level offense, burglary, something of that nature, to the individual you read about in the newspaper that have been alleged to have killed 3 or 4 people. That's what jails do. We are pretrial facilities. And when we talk about jails and prisons, people automatically, I would ask you this question in your mind. You think, wow, prisons, deep into the pool. 635,000, 700,000 people will be released from prison this year. About 8 million are going to go through the doors of your county jail. We are the deep end of the pool, with 92% of that number returning back to the streets of your community. So I want to make sure we understand what we're talking about when we talk about jails, because really to have this conversation, you need all the opportunities we have. Although MCCF, we're a 3-facility system. MCCF, Montgomery County Correctional Facility, our up-county facility that we opened in 2003, it's bedded for 1,028. We have plenty of room there today. We have 566 in that facility today. But when you look at the number we have under supervision, 2,300 individuals under supervision today in the county, but 700 within the secure confines of a facility. We're managing 71% of the total pretrial population of Montgomery County. We're managing them in the community under pretrial supervision programs that allow us to manage an individual while they're at home, while they're taking care of their bills, taking care of their family connection. That is a tremendous number. And when you talk about a great equalizer in corrections, pretrial reform. And I don't know where that fit into our conversation today, but when you read about pretrial reform, making sure that an individual is not sitting inside the walls of a county jail because someone may say, well, your bond is $50. Well, if you don't have $50, it might as well be $5,000 or $5 million. making sure that we're truly the population that is secure inside the walls of a facility, or people that need to be there for the safety of the general public, for the safety of our citizens of Montgomery County, not because they can't afford to pay a bond, not because we are scared of that individual. We're using validated assessment, validated risk assessment to decide who goes home and who stays, not money. Because when you start talking about, and I'm sure you'll get into mass incarceration and other pieces of this, but this whole idea of a correctional system that operates on money. You know, that okay, you got to pay your bond to get out of jail, to pay your lawyer to engage your pretrial defense. In Montgomery County, they saw and we're reading a lot about pretrial now. We saw the wisdom of pretrial in this county 26 years ago. And there are 13 counties in the state of Maryland that have pretrial, the rest don't, 24 counties. I mean, we were on the leading edge of that in this county, making sure that people aren't sitting in jail solely because they can't afford to purchase their freedom through bond. And I wanted to make sure we set the stage when we have this conversation, because there's a whole lot more about what we do rather than intake assessment and diagnostic. The Montgomery County Correctional Facility, longer-term holding, 748 people today under alternatives to incarceration, serving a program in the community, doing good work, education, giving back, civic virtues, some restorative justice that aren't sitting in a jail cell. But if you don't have those programs, and you don't have all of those pieces that allow you, I think, as a system to be prescriptive, you don't have a full-scale correctional system. So what I want to start the conversation with, and really hope everyone understands that in Montgomery County, we are fortunate to have a full-scale system, a system that has all of the alternatives in this path of moving through the criminal justice system, and not all of them began and end with incarceration. So
what I find very provocative to me about that observation, it takes me back to when you and I first met. Some of you have heard the story that I was a part of Leadership Montgomery, and my class made a trip, as we do, as one of our experiences, to spend the day in the correctional facility. And as soon as I walked in, Rob said, and I had been in the college about a year. He says, we got to get to know each other. I want to talk to you about the things we can do. And he had this, every time he took a pause in the conversation, he kept saying, but I got to talk to you. And I said, you know what? Let's talk later. I'm here as a part of the group. But it resonated. And then at the end of the day, our experience was a group of 4 inmates. We rotated through to listen to them tell their story of how they arrived, and more importantly, one of my classmates, to every one of the gentlemen that we heard from, was 4 men, what are you going to do not to be in this situation again? And to a person, they all said, I'm either going back to Montgomery College or I am going to go to Montgomery College. So I looked at Rob and I said, you got me. Did you set me up for that? And he said, no. He said, but DeRionne, if 92% of our incarcerated population goes back to the communities they came from, and he always has this dramatic pause, I thought you were going to do it, how do you want them back? Yes. So this idea then of education becomes important to me. And you have been a huge proponent of the Model Learning Center and all the work that we've been doing in your correctional facilities and the system that you described. Can you talk about why you're such a huge proponent of this, and what do you think the effect of these programs have inside the facilities that you supervise?
Well, I started out as a correctional officer. I didn't start out as an administrator. I started out working in a system that had little to no programs. I was trying to manage and work with people that had nothing to do all day long but watch TV. This was when you smoked in jail. There's no cigarette smoking in jail, and there was very little to gain from being there. It just wasn't the system that I envisioned. Good programs are good security. That's not a catchphrase. When you have an individual that is involved programmatically, trying to, and here's the issue, is not making people want to change their lives, creating opportunity where they can. All right, we didn't have to, when we added substance abuse treatment, we didn't have to go out and recruit for that. These were individuals that like you and I, we see the error in what got us into a situation, and I think in the most reasonable fashion, we want to fix it. My grandfather had a saying that, free your mind and your rear end will follow. I've changed that you free your mind and opportunity will follow. And this idea of watching education really open eyes. Now, when we talk about education, you mentioned all the wonderful programs that we do, and watching people succeed, watching the faces at graduation of individuals. Some of those people that you saw in those pictures did not go home. They went on to prison for long-term stays. And we didn't differentiate who got education between who was staying and who was going. You saw the looks on their faces, looks of success. What brings me back every day, and I told you this, was when you and I sat on that stage and we watched the graduation, we watched the looks of the families, their moment that they wanted to have for their family and allowing them to have that. But education comes in a lot of different forms. When, and I had the pleasure of coming to Montgomery County when the Montgomery County Correctional Facility was designed. And I came here, and I will give all credit where credit is due to a gentleman that's sitting in the audience, Art Wallenstein. Art Wallenstein, the former director of the Montgomery County Department of Correction and Rehabilitation. And if I can only follow in a part of Art's footsteps, Art is a national leader on this topic, not because he can talk it and know it, because he has done it. So this, we came, and when I came to work for Art, I was already a disciple of where I wanted to go with education and the programs that I had done in Frederick County, but Art and I were given a facility that was absolutely incredible, that this county had invested in, a 305,000 square foot facility where our classrooms look like classrooms in your college, they look like classrooms in your schools, where we could really do good programming. And we're doing the GED, and I got 12 people in high school today, 12 people that came into our system with IEPs and are in high school today. But education comes in a lot of ways. And we were fortunate to open up a facility under this idea of direct supervision. Direct supervision where the officer, the staff are present in the living units with the population. And it allowed us in doing that. So you can imagine if most of what you see on TV about a correctional facility is you all are living in this environment, I'm the officer, I come back and check every 20 minutes, every half an hour, and there may be a camera watching what's going on. That's how still 80% of the jails and prisons in our country operate. Not us. Direct supervision puts the staff member in the presence, in the equation, along with not just the uniformed staff member, the case manager, the educator. I can do as many programs inside a housing unit in a therapeutic community as I can in a classroom. So how do you take that environment and that physical plant that we were given by the taxpayers of Montgomery County and take it beyond traditional education? We do a lot of arts programming. And don't roll your eyes. But you want to talk about how arts programming opens the doors for other things? It is absolutely amazing. A lot of programs that, around Black history, bringing in the Tuskegee Airmen, having an individual that perhaps had never had in their life seen, touched, or talked to someone of success that is the same color that they are. And the Tuskegee Airmen still is one of the absolute most amazing programs we've ever done.
What an actor that you
have. Charles Dutton,
yeah.
Rock.
Yeah.
We did a program and for 200 individuals in a room that probably should have only held 150. And not a individual getting out of their chair. Rock coming in, Charles Dutton coming in doing a one-man show. It is the education piece is more than the traditional in the classroom. It's the therapeutic community. It's this arts piece. It's this model of success. And, it's not all warm and fuzzy, but allowing someone to engage something they do well and find it because they haven't found it. and using that to take them somewhere else. And I think that's what we've been really fortunate at doing, and also not closing our minds. Montgomery College was a natural progression in a 30-year focus of education in Montgomery County. So again, Art and I can't take any great credit for being the individual that brought education to the Montgomery County Correctional Facility, but the natural progression of taking it into the college arena, the adult learner arena, being able to look at certification programs and with individuals who professionally do this every day for a living. And you brought so much to us, but I think now we've really found that is such a good collaborative relationship. It was the next natural step in the progression of education. And now, we're into this whole new thing with tablets. And I see my colleagues that help teach at the jail talking about how we can extend the learning day beyond the classroom in a really safe manner. And I know you and I have talked about that. But this idea of education, and education in all forms, from what we watch, what we see, what we experience, and I don't want to at all underestimate the education that comes from the staff. The general staff member, the officer, the case manager, the nurse, the correctional dietary officer, the psychologist, the psychiatrist, the therapist, the drug and alcohol treatment therapist, because when you're in that environment, that person in direct supervision takes on the role of an educator, of a mentor. And the physical plan, it's a burden. It's a lot, 8.5 hours in, almost permanently on display inside these housing units, but it provides such an opportunity of change. And at the end of the day, what do we produce with that education? We produce incidences of violence that are dramatically, I'm not talking about a little bit, dramatically lower than facilities that don't have direct supervision. And I can tell you, there's two things in this country you don't ever want to try to run as a jail administrator. One is a corrupt and violent facility, and two is an overcrowded facility. So all of those pieces we've talked about, that we have the alternatives, that things don't begin and end with incarceration. It's also this idea that we have the space and the opportunity to do it.
You've described such a textured and nuanced understanding of thinking about correctional services. So I'm stuck with this one idea. I thought, well then, are we correct in what we call the people, the residents, the offenders, the folks who are in those facilities? Because I think names are important.
Oh, absolutely.
Naming conventions are important. And I'm interested to know how Montgomery County chooses to label, call people who live in these facilities, who are there for a therapeutic purpose, a punitive one, a rehabilitative. How do you capture that in what you choose to call the folks who reside there?
When I came to Montgomery County and I visited our pre-release center, it's a facility, individuals on their way back to the community, 172 beds, and residents. The terminology there is a resident. I was like, that was 2,000 residents. I was used to a system of inmate. And an inmate, I would say, probably still is the vernacular kind of across the country. But a resident has not grown on me. I would say I've found it to be accurate. So, now when we're looking at this, I can tell you, we don't walk through our system saying, inmate so-and-so, inmate so-and-so. We use their name. We refer to people by name. They're individuals. And I really think that it's something that, while not overt in our system, calling people inmate Joe, inmate Green, inmate whatever, I think it's something we need to visit. Because we don't use it, so why should it still exist in the headline measure, in the mission? And we've talked about that. It's an individual, it's a person. People first always.
Well, it goes back to this idea that you talked about earlier about the media, entertainment, because I think a lot of that, what we think about what happens in jails and prisons are a reflection of the television shows Lock Up, Orange is the New Black. I mean, you name it.
that really has shaped, inappropriately it would sound, our views of what happens in typical correctional facilities within our country, for that matter.
And it shapes the conversation for people
Yes.
that don't have the opportunity to come in the door. We try to be very transparent. I know there's probably many in this room that have toured our facility, and you know, tours they can be disruptive. They can to the normal aspects of the day, but they're essential because we've got to change that conversation. We've got to do, you know, the media pieces where we can accurately show what we're doing and how we're doing it. Because at the end of the day, voters and the citizens that pay the bills, the taxpayers, they have a say in this. One of the things that I think we've always been fortunate in Montgomery County is we have a highly educated group of individuals, but above and beyond that, I think the normal taxpayer in Montgomery County is inquisitive.
Yes.
They're inquisitive. They want to know. They have an interest. You know, when I first came here, I didn't know him. There was a gentleman that just I adore, Bill Campbell. And Mr. Campbell is no longer with us, that he took such an interest in what we were doing inside the jail from an educational, from an advocacy standpoint. And I just always kind of took Bill as he was. You know, Bill called me, man, you got out, Rob, I'm coming. He didn't say, I'd like to make, Rob, I'm coming, I need to talk to you about something. And he'd come or he'd call Art and want to talk. But, you know, this was a gentleman that was the assistant to Admiral Rickover, the father of the nuclear submarine program in the United States. And his chosen area of interest was the Montgomery County Jail, the library, education. So I use him as just one example of many people that are inquisitive, interested about what we do and how we do it. And I think that's always been the expectation of our leadership, our county executives. I've had the pleasure of working for two, our council members that, you know, answer the question, be open, allow people to come and see what we do and how we do it.
So let's talk a little bit about then the population more that you serve. And I talked about at the beginning that I know you more than anyone is quite aware of the demography and demographics of the folks who reside, the residents in the correctional facility. And I'm wondering how you view the disproportionate representation of people of color in correctional facilities. How do you think about that as someone who's a seasoned professional in this space? And what are some of the factors you think that can be attributed to this?
We're still dealing with the effects of mass incarceration in the 80s and 90s. This overemphasis on sentence length. How long? Let's build our way out of it. Let's put people away for longer periods of time that had no impact on change. Putting people away for longer periods of time in prisons that in no manner, shape, or form could begin to keep up with the reality of programming need to help people. Then you had the failed war on drugs. And that over incarceration. You had 3-time loser laws where, you know, states actually thought it was a good idea to put in place it on your 3rd felony conviction. You're going to go to prison for a mandatory 25 years. You know, in the 80s, what was it? 15, 20 states very proudly implemented that, and then 7 to 8 years later, very quietly got away from it because they realized it had no impact on crime. I think what we forgot to do in all of these pieces was to really begin and look at the research and look at the data and look at people, understand what was bringing people to our doors. You look at the war on drugs. We were locking up tens of thousands of individuals and offering no treatment, none whatsoever. I think one of the more interesting articles that I've read, and I like to read articles on our work, but on things in general. And I read the article, and I believe it was the New York Times, that talked about 1.5 missing black men. And that really struck me, that in this age group of 25 to 52, African American men that were missing because they were dead, they were gone, they were in prison. Look at the after effects of that. Look at the family, the generational reality of what we're seeing. You know, I've been doing this now, I'm 34 years. So I'm working on some third generations. I have had in our system, and our correctional staff would tell you, we've had 3 generations at the same time.
Wow.
Grandfather, father, son. And so we're going back to this idea of, the war on drugs disproportionately affected
How do you disrupt
communities
that,
of
though?
color and poverty.
How do you disrupt that cycle? I mean, that is profound. When you think about a legacy, I mean, most of us have the belief that we want our child to do better than us,
Sure.
to have a different experience. But the significance of having multiple generations, this is the legacy of incarceration, and then the impact on that on the family structure. That just kind of just blew my mind there for a second.
I think the profound impact of that family, I'm blessed. You or I will never know that feeling. But, talking to the family, talking to the grandfather.
Right.
So I'm going to now, hit the conversation. He's at Green. This is not what I envision for my kids. It's not what I envision for my son. It's not what I envision for my grandson. But thank you for what you're trying to do. Thank you for trying to break the cycle. But the cycle is about really, the war on drugs is not going to be broken until we talk about treating people. Now we look at the opioid epidemic. If you want to, people that are afraid to talk about race are people that scare me. So, but when you want to talk about the opioid crisis now, and you talk about the general
middle-class white folks.
Exactly.
Right.
You talk about, the African-American population staying inside our jail, and you go, Green, where were they at when it was happening to us?
Oh. We were mass incarcerating.
And we were going, and it's okay to sit there and go, and you talk your way out by saying, well, today's today. But it's a real reasonable question. Where were you at then? I am hoping we saw the error of our ways. We've gotten rid of disproportionate sentencing with crack cocaine and cocaine powder. We're focused on treatment. We're focused as much, and now under justice reinvestment, more on treatment than we are on incarceration. We were always talking about, first it was incarceration, and then we went, I'm sorry, I don't mean to forget you all are here, but I'm talking to my friend here. So then we started talking about diversion. Now, diversion is how do you get people into the system and then divert them to treatment. But they're already in the system, so you divert them out into a treatment opportunity. Now, we're talking about this word. Remember this, deflection. Not bringing people into the system to begin with. And we're doing that really well in this county as well. But we're talking about how does deflection, does it have to begin and end with a criminal arrest? How can you take an individual and steer them towards treatment? So we've decriminalized and went from citable offenses for some of the drug offenses that we have, but more this focus on how do we deflect people towards treatment. That's where our money needs to be spent. That's what JRA is about. You read Justice Reinvestment, and Justice Reinvestment was probably one of the most interesting committees I have ever sat on. I spent 3 years sitting on that, helping write this new legislation. And Maryland, by no means did we have an epiphany. We were the 29th or 30th state in the country to do it, okay? So we could learn from other states that had done it. But justice reinvestment, reducing prison population, taking the amount of money, not putting it back in the general fund, investing it in treatment. And we've already, the studies, the science, if you go to the JRA website, the science is already there and tells us exactly what we need to do. If we're going to pull it out of one place, we need to invest it in clinical treatment. We need to invest it in helping the mentally ill. We need to address it into the two biggest issues that people have leaving the facility when they're going home, which is homelessness and employment.
Oh my God, you just took my next question.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Just homelessness and employment. How do we help people navigate that? JRA, if you are an interested individual in this room, in the criminal justice system, how it flows and maybe what we're dreaming that it can look like, go and look at the Justice Reinvestment Initiative and the legislation, because that's where we've got to spend our money. We've got to invest in treatment. Yeah, and we are still one of, I think, two systems and I know we're live, that have licensed clinical treatment inside the jail, but you have 80% or higher of the individuals came from a family of, committed the crime under the influence of, committed the crime to get money for, have a problem with, fill in the blank there, substance abuse nexus with no treatment inside the jail. What are we sitting there waiting on? And we've got a JAZZ program, a licensed clinical treatment program that's not one we just created for in the jail. You know, and I like to brag about the things we do in our county. We don't create jail-based programs. We create programs that exist in the community that you can find in jail. So if you're in our JAZZ program, substance abuse treatment inside the jail, you're transitioning to JAZZ, substance abuse treatment in the community, built-in continuity. Jail staff don't run the treatment program in the jail. Health and Human Services staff run it. The same people that are dealing with it in the community are teaching it in the jail. There's continuity, there's flow built into what we do. And I would say this, I think one of the things I've learned as a jail administrator and a leader in I guess at least what we're doing here in Maryland is that corrections done the right way really resembles Health and Human Services. It's a lot of public health in what we do. And we haven't even started talking about mental health yet. So I'm going to let you get to your questions.
Well, you just gave me one right there, Mr. Green. I want to make sure I give the audience, I want to ask one more question, then I'm going to open it up for you all. But be very clear, I have 3 more pages of questions. So
I'm sorry.
if you all don't, I'm going to say, if you all don't jump in, I got you, okay? This question that I think is pretty profound that you started to stumble upon is this idea of jobs. And I said earlier, how do you want them back, right? So you talked about homelessness and underemployment as one of the most significant issues that recently released folks are going to have when they go back into the community. And then you may have some who may argue about the investment of public tax dollars in doing this type of work. I've heard that, you've heard that. I've had people write to me and tell me, why is a college giving away scholarships to these folks, literally? And we've had to help them understand how philanthropy works, but also be very intentional about talking about our investment in every member of the community. Talk to me a little bit about this idea of job preparation and what success stories have you seen or heard of based on the work that you and us and others do in the correctional facilities?
Well, for us, we opened up what was then called the One-Stop Work Centers, and now they're called America's Job Centers. I give a great deal of credit to an individual who worked for Secretary Perez, Eric Sells-Now, who was in charge of workforce development in Montgomery County for a period of time. But I believe when I got here in 2000, Eric was a case manager. And I'm thinking that at the time when Art introduced me, he said, Eric's also your PIO this week, the Public Information Officer. But Eric Sells-Now and I, when he was in charge of workforce development, really sitting down, we had a space, and truly, not an exaggeration, we drew up the space on a napkin of how we could put a one-stop work center in the jail. And we later found out that it was the first one-stop work center in a county jail in the United States. And that was kind of scary because that should have been a duh.
Yes.
You know, and really, when we said we were first, I was like, I'm proud of that, but wow, it took us till 2005 to do that, to take this time that we have on our hands, this audience that wants to change their lives. How can we surround them with opportunity? We opened up the One-Stop Work Center, and it's been a profound success and focus. And one of our individuals that runs it, Ms. Rojas, sitting over there nodding her head, incredible, but the profound success with individuals whose work and concentration is about helping people understand employment, how to engage it, how to have your wishes and your trajectory meet your dreams, all of that come together. That's been a wonderful success for us, and that focus on employment. It's getting, you know, and when I get those folks that you're spending taxpayers' dollars to get them to the front of the line. And my answer is immediate and adamant. No, I'm not. I'm helping people get in line, period. We're helping to equalize the line, find equity in the line, and understand how do you engage a job. It's not just about what the job is. You know, you may want to be here, but you got to understand all the steps to get you there. And that one-stop work center opportunity, bringing in employers. We did job fairs inside a jail.
Are there any employers or businesses you want to call out that have been really exceptional in working with the job
No,
center?
because I'll miss one
Okay.
or two.
All right.
And so we'll save that for the next version of
Gotcha.
this show with Donna, or I'll send it to you at Bethesda Magazine, and
That'd
let's
be a
do a
great
feature
article.
on some of these folks
Yeah.
that care and want to be involved. But there's many. But they come, they learn, they understand there's a tax credit for employing those that are formerly incarcerated, but looking at the motive, the person, looking them in the eyes. That's why I love Ban the Box. Ban the Box for me, that's not a political statement for me because others support it. I believe in Ban the Box because it equalizes the line. Doesn't mean that an individual can't have a background investigation, but allows them to get in line and look at another person in the face and sell themselves. What are we supposed to do for an individual when they say, Mr. Green, I can't even get to the interview. You've done a great job getting me prepared for this, but I can't get there. They cannot use the skills that we've taught them. And it's not about anymore trying to lie about a felony conviction. I mean, we are way beyond that. You're going to get busted, and we tell them very clearly, you're going to lose a job. Don't lie. Tell the truth. But there's passion in looking someone in the face that transcends a piece of paper. Wouldn't we all agree?
Yes.
And that's what getting rid of the box does. And it's an equalizer of opportunity. And I think the person goes in with the right attitude and the right, yes, I've had my issues, here's where I am. And by the way, let me show you my certificates. Let me show you what I've completed, what I've done, and how I've invested in myself. And look at them in the face and say, give me a chance, I won't let you down. That's important. You know, too much email, too much, we need more of this.
Yes. Look into your soul.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to invite the audience. There are 2 microphones here in the middle. Please feel free to join our discussion and post questions to Director Green. I'll ask you to, one, ensure that you're succinct in your question so we can get a good response back, and then keep them coming, and we'll love to be a part of that. So don't be shy, run on down. I see people coming, don't stop, keep on moving. It's okay to create lines. All right. Come on, Ms. Branson. I see you.
Hello. Hi, how are you? I'm glad you brought up Ban the Box because, you know, we worked on that. But I also wanted you to talk about expungement.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, because those little minor inky-dink convictions, for a lot of people, keep them out of the job market. And I just wanted to thank you because I don't think people necessarily know this, that, you know, we worked on doing the first expungement clinic in Montgomery County, and we made sure that, I think it was 80 people that day, had the access to understand the free legal services, to understand how they could expunge some of their convictions from their record that the state law said could now be erased.
Yes.
So I want to thank you for your support on that because we could not have done it without you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and individuals very involved in that. And expungement, yeah, I mean, we've opened up the law to allow more for expungement. You know, we've talked about the time. I'm thinking what really got my interest in expungement, talking to a couple of the inmate population, and really when I have an important question, I will go back and ask them. I'll go back and tell me how this works. And guy telling me, hey, Green, that's what they call me. Hey, Green, expungement, I got to pay $1,500 to a lawyer, $1,500 just to start the conversation. So when we did those clinics, how could you leave there with attorneys that helped you complete the paperwork, had everything done? All you had to do was pay the filing fee to get that off of your record. So that's a great point, Ms. Branch. And thank you very much for bringing that up, and thank you for your leadership in doing it.
Very good. I come here and I go back and forth.
Hi, good evening. I'm really happy that you're here. Thank you for sharing everything, all the information with us. My name is Patricia Martinez. I work for Montgomery College. I've been with MC for about 1.5 years now with community engagement. I actually interned at PRC back in 2001. And then from there went on to work with the state of Maryland. I was lead intern at PRC and then went to the JLG RICA to treat children and adolescents with severe emotional disturbances. When I left there in 2006, they closed from 80 beds to 30, and now they're reopening some, their residential treatment center. And I guess my question's a little loaded. I know you deal with adults, but in speaking about the generational, I just think about the kids, because working at PRC as an intern and then going to work with the children really taught me to humanize those adults, because I saw the kid in them and I saw the adult in these kids, what could happen if there was no treatment. With all these shootings and things that are going on, and like the violence that the kids see on TV and it's glorified, maybe what ideas you might have, residential versus wraparound services, how to get to the kids before they even make it to the adult facilities to break that cycle.
You tease me outside of my bailiwick, but I'm also, I have no censor button, as my wife frequently tells me. Or I have one, but I don't use it. I am shocked at what some of these young people bring to the table, to our facility, and experiences. Violence in everything we do. I am sometimes, and I'm not going to speak about, I'm not part of the Montgomery County school system, but I'm part of the school system where we reside, and what our teachers have to deal with and what kids bring to the table. We got to stop it as young as we can. We got to, drug education, whether we like it or not, has to be, and now in my opinion, it's got to be in elementary school. All right, sex education and health education, we're getting it in middle school, and the kids could teach it. What they're bringing, and it's just what I'm hearing and what I see, what they bring to the table, the ability to not have a discussion without violence. What we see every day where, we demonize each other to death. The most popular TV shows on television are those that pit one human being against another. Survivor, Big Brother.
We call it reality TV.
I call it junk.
Yes. Isn't that something?
I'm sorry.
That's an oxymoron. Reality TV, yeah.
But it pits people against each other, and that's like the real world to them. It's deep, it's big, but I think now, we used to talk about those educational opportunities when I was in high school. We're back to elementary school, and being able to really have honest discussions about violence, about how you solve problems by talking, and maybe the ability to expand the curriculum for some of our educators without us getting upset about it. And being able to talk to kids about violence, and that's the big issue for me that I see coming into the jails. Our juvenile justice system, we have one. Juvenile corrections should cost 3 times the amount that you spend on adult corrections if you want to save kids from coming and going the extra, because it should be extensive investment in education, therapeutic resources, and everything we need to do to keep them out of the next step of the process. There are people that are a lot smarter than I on that, but that's what I see, and I see happening.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question.
Good evening, Mr. Green. Pleasure meeting you again. Thank you for coming out. I've been to your facility actually a couple times. Not being incarcerated, I went there to volunteer to help out the young men in there. I also went to a volunteer appreciation program that you had in 2015. I meant to shake your hand, but I think I just missed you. But I do have a few questions.
We'll do it tonight.
Okay, awesome. I do have a few questions. What Well, a comment really. I noticed that on the Bureau of Justice Statistics, recidivism is steadily increasing within the first year, increases more in the third year, and increases even more to 76.6% in the fifth year. Just a little curious about that. And also, I noticed that there's been a surge in private prisons. It says that it has increased 100% or more within the last 10 years. And I just, I'm a little confused about that because, I know the whole purpose of going to jail to be rehabilitated, to come out and to join society again. But these statistics are showing quite the opposite. And so I don't know what comments you may have on that. I'm willing to hear it.
Recidivism data is beginning to span and actually start to go down. I think you got to look at it by state and look at it by jurisdictions. I'm not at all shocked at recidivism in states and jurisdictions that don't do anything to curb the tide of everything we've talked about through substance abuse treatment, education, and other things. Not ready for public consumption. You will see it in a month. We're dealing with our Office of County Stat. Just went through another preliminary review of a one-year recidivism study that we did in Montgomery County, and I can tell you that we are struggling with the final elements of it, but one of the data points will be a first-year recidivism rate that's nearly 25% below the national average, which is pretty incredible, focused on education, treatment, and other things, but that number's beginning to come down. Your point is well taken. If we were big business, we'd be out of business. That's not a very good success rate. But the pieces that help keep you out longer and keep the individual stabilized in the community are our two most difficult pieces, which are stable housing, because we know an individual is going to change their address 3 times, the average person 3 times in the first 90 days post-release.
Wow.
And then stable employment. And I think we are doing better here than that national average, much better, but it's not a good statistic for the country. Private prisons represent, I understand, about 10% of the total beds of incarceration in the United States. That number is going down. I am not a fan at all of privatization, soup to nuts privatized prisons for the purposes of monetary gain. I believe there are elements of privatized prisons that are unconstitutional. So I don't operate one, nor have I ever worked at one, nor do I ever intend to, and that would be my statement on that.
Well, thank you again for meeting you, and I thank you for your response.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Professor.
Good evening. And
Good evening.
Thank you very much for coming. We at Montgomery College are really, I would say, blessed, because just today I was in a meeting called Dreaming America, where there were poems being read by young children who are incarcerated in very, I want to make it more diplomatic, very unsuitable conditions. So we see that there are youngsters who are being incarcerated mainly because they were undocumented. Do we have any of them in our present system? And secondly,
Undocumented juveniles?
yeah.
No.
Okay. Second one to that is that we hear a lot about ISIS and how they are trying to get people from our regular prison systems. People who are in minority outside the corrections are unfortunately maybe majority inside the correction systems. So does that make a difference in how they operate inside the correction systems? And a follow-up on that is that some of the religious people, they need some accommodations for doing whatever they are required to do. So how does the correctional system accommodate religious requirements for people?
So we have what's called the Religious Freedoms Restoration Act in the United States, an act that requires us to give access to all religions into our system. We follow what's called the National Institute of Corrections Essential Tenets of the Faith. I can tell you today, we probably have 325 faith-based volunteers that are coming into the facilities. We recognize all religions, all tenets of faith. I believe spirituality is a huge piece of recovery. We are all looking for things to grasp onto. We struggle often with the security threat groups and gang members, individuals that have a sense a sense to something other than themselves, a sense of obligation to something other than themselves. And I think spirituality is a big piece in helping break that when you're finally safe, you're finding an environment where you're able to concentrate on things to make your life better. That spirituality part is really important. So we are open to all faiths. And individual counseling, that's really a hallmark of what we do, as well as our volunteer programs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to follow up,
Oh, sure.
excuse me. Montgomery County and Maryland itself is a safe state. So have you had any requirements from the federal government for information inside the correctional facilities?
So you're speaking of immigration policy? Our immigration policy, and I can put it in a nutshell from our county executive and what we do. We do not inquire. An individual that comes into our system is fingerprinted. Those fingerprints go to the state of Maryland, who shares them with Department of Homeland Security, FBI. If there's a hit for immigration status on that individual, we will only recognize those once for individuals that are there on a priority 1, priority 2 offense, or previous priority 1, 2 offense, very serious crimes. We will notify ICE that they're in our custody, and we hold no one beyond their normal and customary release date in the county. So if today Rob Green were arrested and the commissioner releases me and says you're released on your personal recognizance.
You'll never be arrested, don't worry.
You never know. I would not be held beyond my normal release time. And the Attorney General of the state of Maryland has told us that you will hold no one beyond that. So that's really our policy as to how we operate. They are not in our facilities. We didn't, in any manner, shape, or form, taking our information. That is, in essence, the flow of how it works for us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Green. My name is Ariel Nikolai. For the sake, I'm not going to be biased. I'm not going to tell you what side I've been on, but I've been to your facilities. I also am the personal assistant to the owner of Hope Restored Incorporated. I am a former graduate of Montgomery College in Silver Spring, and ironically, my ex-fiance, he's a graduate from Montgomery College Rockville, but however, he is also in ISIS. He graduated straight A's with HVAC, and he's sitting there on a crime that is only for something that is legal in now maybe 4 states, which I kind of find hard to see a straight A student with no prior background to be ready to be shipped to Nicaragua. He hasn't even been in Nicaragua, and he's actually 32 today in 30 years of his life. So we're not going to get into that. But like I said, I appreciate your jail addiction service, JAZZ program and MRT, but how for reentry are we going to prepare people to come back into society if we're only giving them GED opportunities? Once upon a time, you were able to get your college degree in prison. So how are you preparing people just by saying, oh, you can become a barber, or you can get a self-serve and become a server? That's not enough. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not enough. Like, you have to have things implemented to come, like PRC, just to say, oh, you can say, if you do this, we're going to slap your hand on the wrist and you can get away scot-free, or we're going to send you back and you're going to do your backup time. The person who's sitting in jail, he does not deserve to be there right now. I've done way worse crimes than he has done. I have. I can admit that. Okay. Is that favoritism because I have a college degree and I can do so? Where's the line drawn? You don't even allow them to come back in and to vote. You have stripped them of their natural born right. And I feel as though even then, they don't get to have this right behind bars. I'm glad I can stand here and say this, but it's not going to be enough for just JAZZ and MRT and PRC and for you all to just say that we can write this down. It's above you all, actually. Because I honestly, out of all the police precincts, I have the utmost respect for Montgomery County and their zero tolerance. I don't have any worries about seeing my police officer on the TV because they shot somebody by accident. They are very respectful. And I expect this county to take the lead, because they do work in cahoots with 4th District, because we're right across the street from each other, and they learn from each other. But I don't really have a question for you, more of a comment. And if you want to relay something back to me, please feel free to do so. But I just feel as though those programs aren't enough. And like I said, I personally have a lot of our clients are we're now national with this. We're all in all 50 states. So I want to see people actually get what they want to. If you have a sentence that's going to be 3-4 years, there's no reason why you shouldn't have a college degree. You had nothing better to do with your time besides read a book.
I agree.
So we shouldn't have any problem with
our
anybody coming out
census
here
isn't-
and relapsing for stealing something like petty and
I
them
agree.
being thrown to the wolves because they didn't know what to do with themselves. They didn't have any idea how to come back without being nervous and saying, I don't know what to do, help me. You're not going to give them $5,000 and a place to live. We have a whole city in Baltimore that's burnt down. We don't have enough space for these people to go? How is that possible?
You have two people who support exactly what you're saying and don't disagree at all.
I was going to say, yeah, I agree with you. Let me tell you what we're doing about a couple of those.
Okay.
Remember jails, our maximum length of stay is 18 months.
Yes.
Our average length of stay, if you take everybody that's been perhaps incarcerated at CPU to spend the 18 months, our average length of stay probably right now is around 35 to 36 days.
Okay.
So we need to be nimble, and we need to look at what we can accomplish to put people on the path. Your question about college certificate programs, college degree programs inside the jail is our next step with Montgomery
Graciously
College.
appreciate it. Thank
and
you.
we're looking at how we want to start that and how we move it forward, but be able to start it so that the individual can complete it all the way through. Voters' rights, you're right, it exists above us, but the law as it exists today, I've been doing voter registration workshops inside the jail, registering voters probably for the entire time that I've been in Montgomery County, which would be 17 years.
Nice.
And we do those voter registration workshops, I know at least once a year. Our library board has adopted it. And I think it's really important for people to understand, because some people think they've lost their rights and they haven't.
Right.
So it's understanding that, one, that they haven't, how to register and become a part of that. But I agree, there are pieces of it that are above me.
Absolutely.
But in my world, I think we're doing all we can and have the pieces that you're looking for in our eyesight.
I trust you all to set the barrier as you've always done, so I have no bad comments to say about Montgomery County, and I love Montgomery College because I graduated from there.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Gentlemen,
Hi, how's it going?
can you talk into the microphone?
yeah,
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Okay. My name is Miguel Rodriguez. I didn't rehearse this. I didn't know I was going to be here tonight. And I've got like a paragraph here. I'm going to try to shorten it up real quick for you as best I can. So first off, she touched on some interesting things, but and the gentleman in the black suit that was here before her, he touched on the monetary side of things, and you touched the monetary side of things, and I think that's key, and I wanted to ask about that. So first of all, I want to start by saying that it seems, I'm just going to read off my little script here that I just wrote like 5 minutes ago. It seems that you're sincerely doing everything you can to endorse and create a positive, constructive environment within prisons for the inmates. It seems like you respect the individuals in there, and I applaud you and I respect you 100 times for that. That's amazing. But I did want to ask about the limits that you're facing, because we have very common interests. I think everybody in this room has very common interests, especially somebody who was just released, let's see, November 2016 after doing 3 years as a youthful offender, excuse me. So this hits close to home for me. So as soon as I saw this on Facebook, I said, oh yeah, I'm there. Okay, so loaded question, but I'm gonna try to shorten it up. So I wanted to ask, are profits made beyond simply maintaining the minimum necessary upkeep and operation of a prison? I'm going into the difference between privatized prison, as you said, and what it seems like you're doing, which is like a not-for-profit prison. I wanted to ask about the difference between those two institutions, and I wanted to ask if there is profits being made beyond what is necessary for the income and the good of the inmates and what is necessary for the staff. I wanted to ask who exactly makes that profit, and is it possible in your seat, is it possible for you even to truly promote rehabilitation over condemnation as long as those profits are made? Are those profits that are being made by whoever privatized prisons, do those stop you in any way? Does that affect your environment? So thank you.
That's a very good question. You've done your homework. So the notorious area of privatization and profiteering in corrections, above and beyond privatization of soup to nuts, kind of every aspect, opening and operating a private prison, has been phone revenue. All right, so this idea of phone revenue across the country, there are still places where an individual could pay $4 for the first minute and $1 for every minute thereafter. Phone revenues got way out of control. Over 10 years ago, Montgomery County, and I give this total credit to Art Wallenstein, who said that Montgomery County is out of the phone revenue business. He and I sat down, we talked about it, he said, we're out of the business. What we want is the cheapest phone call possible for our population, with every penny of revenue going back to make that phone call inexpensive. So we have today, it's 70 cents for I believe 70 couple cents for a 20-minute phone call anywhere in the United States, because phones keep families together and keep individuals connected. And phones are a big piece of security and safety for us when you can have that connection. That is the notorious area of profiteering. That's gone. The other area is the inmate commissary. So an individual's ability to buy snack cakes, hygiene products, things of that nature. We are constitutionally required to provide soap, toilet paper, toothpaste, everything that you need. There's no such thing as an individual not getting the products they need inside of a jail if they're totally indigent. You have an inmate commissary or a commissary program that allows individuals to buy up to $60 worth of commissary a week. They can be potato chips and maybe other things that you enjoy. The pricing on those, what we do is on the hygiene products, keep them very, very inexpensive. I try to keep that as close to bottom line, low end pricing as you can, no markup. On a candy bar, the markup is comparable to what you would pay at a 7-Eleven. Every penny of that profit, every penny goes into the commissary welfare fund. We have an inmate population that is representative of every housing unit in the facilities, and they have a vote in how that money's to be used. Every penny is used to the benefit of the inmate population. So I don't use it to supplement that which the county is supposed to pay for. I don't have a budget that says, well, I only have half of the sheets, towels, and linens I need. I'll buy the rest out of that. That's not how it works. That is every benefit to the inmate population, to the incarcerated population. So it's things like recreation. We'll bring in special programming, things of that nature. So those profits, that's it. There are no profits on medical care. We use a community standard of care. We pay the prevailing rate, but there are no other profits. Now, because I'm very interested in your question, I want to use this as another opportunity to talk about what scares me about tablets. There's companies out there that are trying to do the exact same thing with tablets that they did with cell phones. To take tablets and say, okay, we're going to give you the tablets, but we're going to have an opportunity fee on it, and if you want to use it for email, you'll pay this amount. That's what worries me about the next generation of technology that I think can really help us in corrections. And we've done away with it with our contract, but I hope that does not happen in my industry, because I really believe tablets and this element of technology and extending the educational day into the cell time, into what is normally not productive time where you have someone in a classroom, is going to be absolutely groundbreaking for us. And I hope, I can tell you it won't in Montgomery County, but I hope as an industry we don't get into the same type of profiteering that you talked about.
Thank you.
Thank you
very
so
much.
much. I'm just so you know, we've got about 5 minutes left, or probably 4. So I'm going to let these last 2 be the last questions, and I'll have you go, young man.
Hi, how's it going, Mr. Green and Dr. Pollard? My name is Mazen Abdulmonium. I'm just a resident of the county. I've worked for the Montgomery County elections and the Census Bureau. I just have a couple questions regarding to the population, standard of life. So these are 3 things that I think are key issues in the correction facilities. I'm going to try and make it into one question. I just wanted to know about the distinction between institutional responsibility and the responsibility of individuals. As you know, they're accounted for, in a trial when they have their charges, and then they may incur charges in the facility. So the first one is about the collusion of correctional officers and inmates, whether they're gang affiliated or not, how those ideas affect like work programs, pre-trial, and modern mass incarceration, and being compared to modern day slavery, how the reform of inspections and investigations of modern incarceration facilities is going, and the last thing is how successful has been reporting sexual violence been in Montgomery County facilities.
All right, so let me start with the last one and go back, and if I miss any of it, tell me I didn't get it. So we were one of the first county facilities in the country that got our PREA certification, Prison Rape and Elimination Act, our PREA certification. We met those standards. We've just had our second audit as the Detention Services Division. Actually, our pre-release facility is getting ready to undergo theirs. So we're reporting all of that data. The exact data is up on our website. You can go and read it for yourself. The prevalence of sexual violence, inmate on inmate, staff on inmate, all of that is listed in a very transparent manner on our website, and very supportive of that. It's not an issue of just reporting it, investigating it. Crime is no more acceptable inside the walls of our facility than it is in the streets of our community. So not only is sexual violence inside the jail a standard, it's crime. So we look at that. Now your other question, I'm going to go back. You were asking about investigations. I'm sorry.
Like federal investigations, like the gentleman was alluding to earlier, federal investigations in terms of corruption between, as we were talking about right now with sexual violence, whether it's, when inmates they're released on work programs, right, as well, they're out in the public, or if they're on pretrial, whether or not, there's certain types of favoritism towards that, whether the paperwork goes through. I don't really know how that would work, in terms of how paperwork is sent between PC, I believe it's the facility in Potomac, the detention facility, and then.
Well, let me try to answer the two you came up with. Yeah. So we have no federal investigations on corruption. I have a high bar. We have a high bar and a high expectation in Montgomery County. And if there is investigations to be had, incidences to be investigated, we do it in our county. We have processes. State's attorneys are involved in those if and when they happen, and yes, they do happen. But you got police your own house and you set the bar high. So I know of no federal investigations involving our institution. When you talk about the elements of favoritism, I guess you're speaking about how to get into like a work release program or whatever. That's based on your sentence, that's based on a classification review and an assessment that takes in a lot into effect, a lot into consideration about when you get pre-release and maybe the level of supervision. It's based on behavior and other things, but they're done in a classification manner, not based on who we like or who we don't.
I understand that.
Thank you.
Fitting that we have our last question or comment from our most esteemed colleague here at Montgomery College.
Oh, you're lovely.
Thank you.
My name's Nancy Newton. I'm the Special Programs Director with Workforce Development, and it's been my privilege to provide the leadership for the staff at the jail since January 2016. And I'm working on my strategic plan for where we go from here. And I'm just wondering, for the two of you, where would you like our partnership to go from here in terms of the education for our inmate learners and the residents at PRC, not forgetting Ben? Thank you.
Well, we haven't gotten that far. It's a great question, Nancy, as always, because I think one of the things that 5 years ago, Rob said to me, we need to be doing more. Let's figure out how to make that happen. And it took time, and that's what we're doing now. The questions here today make me think about what is the next iteration of that work, because I'm always reminded of that fact that the investments that we can make as a community in this space ultimately benefit of us all. Because it comes back to me at the end of the day, how do you want somebody back? And that man or that woman who's incarcerated right now, they have a story, they have the lived experience, and I have to believe, based on what I know about humanity, they don't want to be back there. So how do we give them options and opportunity And the only thing I know for sure that helps you get there is education. So I think that's a part, as you all know, the college is going to be engaging in a new strategic planning process in about a year. And as a result of that, we're going to be talking about what is the next level of this work. And I have no doubt that this gentleman is going to give me some new ideas about how we can tighten that partnership. Bam.
What she said, bam, absolutely. This has been an incredible partnership of growth, and we have done so much in a very brief period of time. But so as we go into like corrections and our partnership 2.0, 2.1, 2.3, whatever it is, understand we're in a time of change in corrections. The acuity of the population that we're seeing inside our facilities of confinement, serious and persistent mental illness, ladies and gentlemen, serious and persistent mental illness. We'll be going to Annapolis again this week with our delegation to try to make sure that people with serious and persistent mental illness are not sitting behind the walls of our facilities or getting the treatment they need where they need it. We are blessed to live in a county that has put a lot of money and services into helping treat mental illness. The more we peel back that onion, the more we find. The more we assess, the more need we find. So I say this, and that's one area. Our programs will need to be nimble. They will need to be innovative. They will extend beyond the walls. I have a goal, and I'm going to put my goal on record with my friend here. And this is not even as much a Montgomery County or Montgomery College issue, is that I have a great interest in seeing a tablet pilot program for every individual coming into the system and to study it over a 2-year period. Opportunities for education are not measured in hours, days, and classroom hours. They can be measured in minutes and infomercials. Opportunities to engage something you didn't see before, you didn't know, and you experienced, and you're at the point in your life that, and perhaps for many, sitting there in that cell is that point to say, wow, it is time to listen and engage. And I think that level of technology at every point through a system, but I'd like to study it. I'd like to look at it, what it does, not just in education, reduction in violence and other things. And I know I've talked way too long.
No. Now you understand why I wanted to have him for a dialogue. Each and every time I sit down with Rob, I'm proud to call him friend. I'm just grateful to call him partner, but he also makes me think differently about this work. So thank you, Director Green, for joining us today. Thank each and every one of you for choosing to be here. Just a couple of concluding thoughts. I want to thank our partners at Bethesda Magazine who've helped us so tremendously and been such phenomenal partners around publication. I want to thank Megan Gibbons from my office, MCTV, who always do just such a phenomenal job at trying to make sure, because we're live with this, so they're telling me hurry up and wind it up. I hope that you all would choose to be a part of our last dialogue that we'll be doing this year. We will be having journalist Joshua Green, host of WMAU's radio program 1A. We hope that you'll choose to be a part of that. We'll be doing that on March 6th at our Germantown campus. I want to say thank you all for being a part of the dialogue. Don't let it stop here. Take it into your homes. Join us for a reception this evening and travel safely. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Rockstar.